Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelancer writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series, where we take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. With this video, I'll be reviewing the all-in-one supplement Feywild Companion, designed by Jimmy Flowers and the Splinterverse team for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my content, consider using my affiliate links for online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/RogueWatson. First, I need to give a heartfelt apology to the entire Splinterverse team because they actually submitted this product for review back when it released in September of 2021. It is approximately, as I check my bare wrist, January of 2023. I am so sorry. My backlog for reviews is quite gnarly, but that was especially egregious to wait so long to finally get this review done. And it's doubly bad because this is such a fantastic product. It's already a platinum bestseller on the DM's Guild, so you really don't need me to tell you how good of a product this is, but I'm going to tell you anyway. This is easily one of probably the best supplements I have seen on the DM's Guild, especially one that so is properly themed towards just a certain niche, which is the Feywild. So that's pretty obvious if you're going to be playing with Wild Bounty Witchlight or just any Fey-themed adventure, or maybe you just even want one character in your game or campaign to be a Fey-themed character and have some, backstory or some a lineage or a subclass that's tied to that, then this is a fantastic supplement. It is designed for both players and DMs pretty much equally. It has a lot. It's got bestiary content. It's got spells and magic items and feats and subclasses, lineages, as I mentioned, and then an entire adventure is here. Like not a huge campaign book adventure, but a maybe something between what would be a one-shot and like Lost Mines of Phandelver, I guess. I'm not even sure what maybe a short adventure, I guess, if there's a proper name for that. But still pretty impressively long for what this is. And then a bunch of like scripted encounters, like just I was really blown away, and the production value is absolutely incredible. The amount of original art that's in here, we get full page art. We've got VTT maps with some gorgeous art style, full color detail, everything. Like it really brings just about everything I could possibly want from a supplement. It is quite long. We're looking at about 150 pages, so I can't really do a individual deep dive over like a particular subclass or something like I would with a shorter product to try to keep this video not lasting all day. But I will tell you that this will absolutely be on my top 10 list, but you have to remember my top 10 list for the end of the year is things that I've reviewed of the year. So even though it's gonna, by the time I do my top 10 list for next year, this thing will be well over 2 years old. So that part gets a little awkward, but you know what? Better late than never is going to be my motto for doing DM's Guild reviews. And I think you can extrapolate this based on other companions that they've done. I believe they've recently done a Dragonlance companion, which I did a shout out for during my Dragonlance review because this product has been so dang impressive. So we'll cover the player stuff first because I think that's the first half, and then the second half is pretty much all the DM stuff, which is like monsters and adventures and encounters. So first we get lineages, which is essentially just another word for race. I think we're still trying to figure out what word to use because race is clearly not a word that's works well, and I don't think species sounds very good either. Lineage sounds nice. I think that's what they used. Yeah, and it mentions in Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. So you can use that as kind of a perfunctory race, I guess, in a way, but the nomenclature is we're still working on how that works, but for now it's functionally different races, and they have to do with different Fey creatures, obviously. So if you want to make a creature that's actually from the Fey, you could play as a Fey Bound or a Green Seer or a Killerin. They seem a little bit they seem really nice and fun, maybe a little overtuned, although I think some of them don't include ability score increases, which is a kind of, then I was like, okay, maybe that's how they do the trade-off. But like the Feybound has like a once per day redo. Whenever they just make a dice roll for anything, they can kind of sense any creature at will. which, for other creatures, they have to, like, expend a resource to do that. And then you've got, like, green seers who can basically talk to plants at will, and they've got this cool, like, head plant thing they can use with different effects, which seems very cool. Killeran actually seemed like probably the most balanced out of the three, but cool ideas. They're all, basically plant and Fey themed, which I would find appropriate. Subclasses are probably where players are going to get the most excitement, because having subclasses, I always think, is the most well moddable ability from 5e, because the classes are fairly well defined and they've already got their set abilities, and then you can add a little bit of nice flavoring onto each class in order to really specialize and make it your own, and that can come in the form of these new subclasses, which are all pretty much Fey themed. And from what I can tell, they all seemed pretty interesting and fun, which is not something that's usually the case with, providing a lot of different subclasses. Sometimes I enjoy them, and sometimes I think they're kind of phoned in. To go over a few of them, the Artificer is all about the power of writing. So you either writing on paper or just literally writing in the air to do different abilities, and they gain, and it front loads a lot of their abilities, which I always like to see. Right at 3rd level, you get the ability to like write a bunch of words in the air, and that has different magical effects. The Path of the Blinking Pack for barbarians is literally just gain powers of a blink dog, which means you're teleporting around. Which, holy shit, the idea of a teleporting barbarian sounds hilariously powerful. The Bard gains seasonal melodies that you can change around and use different abilities with using your bardic inspiration to use all these seasonal songs, which is of course a giant Fey theme, which seems very appropriate. Really awesome art, by the way. Holy crap, this is absolutely gorgeous. Clerics are all about this magic mirror you can get, which reminds me of Beauty and the Beast, of course. So I think there's some really cool ideas in here. The Fighter can store spells as if you're like a ring of spell storing. The Rogue is like a functioning alcoholic. It's called the Reveler, and like you get other people drunk and you've got a bunch of social like advantages and things. So I think they're all really fun and cute abilities, and the artwork is just mind-blowingly amazing for something that's not like an official Wizards of the Coast product. Like, just absolutely incredible. 2 new backgrounds are the Clown and the Dreamer. They're fine. I don't think backgrounds are very well utilized in terms of their abilities in base game 5e, so I don't necessarily expect that from third parties, but they give me all the traits, bonds, and flawns that I like to see. We get some new spells, which are a lot of enchantment spells, conjuration, illusion that you would find appropriate, some new feats, some really fun magic items. There's also a bunch of flowers and a D100 table of trinkets. There's enchanting instruments. There's a really fun magic deck of cards that has all these crazy abilities where you can even like become the new like dealer. They have these boons and then curses if you add up with it's this whole an entire page worth for these magic deck of cards, which seems really fun. There's a sword, or sorry, it's a scythe or something that can gain charges, and you can spend charges to do different abilities. And then you've got all these magical flower effects, because the Feywild's all about nature and like it's supernatural nature. And all these flowers have they're descriptive obviously, but they have different functional abilities. So they have healing, and they have grenades damage. They can summon creatures, they can banish creatures, and other spell-like effects. So that was a really cool idea and a good way to sell how magical the Feywild is when the flowers themselves can do all these different things. Optional rules. Now we start getting into the DM stuff. So optional rules are different elements you can include when featuring the Feywild, either an entire Feywild campaign or just maybe an encounter or something. Maybe not quite as interesting as I expected with the rules. For example, the Fey portals, it's basically just a bunch of tables, which, D&D, it's all about the tables, and I get that, but it's mainly just more descriptive than it is for rules. There's not really any rules for the Fey portals. Same really with the Cold Iron, it was more descriptive. The Glamours do have some nice rules, which is a way to add abilities onto actually the Glamours and then the Altering Monster Size are both absolutely optional rules, which the Glamours are passive effect you can give to creatures where they always have some kind of ongoing thing, similar to like a Medusa's gaze, or Umber Hulk's I think it's a confusing glare they do, or something where the player has to, like, if they're anywhere near a creature, this automatically comes up, which are really fun creatures, by the way, that causes a stir and makes encounters usually much more memorable. But you don't have to just wait for that creature's turn to actually be able to do a thing and have an effect on people. So I thought that was a really cool addition. And then the Altering Monster Size, because again, Feywild, supernatural, all about creatures and beasts, but maybe they might be of different sizes. You might have, gigantic, insects, or he might have a tiny Tyrannosaurus Rex or a small ogre. So I thought that was pretty cute. And not only does it give us sample stat blocks, but like the rules for how to actually convert those creatures into different sizes, which is a fun idea. Man, the bestiary I was really, really impressed with. I've reviewed a lot of stuff that includes Feywild. In fact, the product, I believe it's Feywild and Shadowfell, made my top 10 list last year and had a lot of really cool creatures in it. But this one, it's not about the quantity necessarily, although there are over a dozen creatures here, but the quality is really incredible. We get this huge descriptions and multiple stat blocks and pictures, and then for big boss creatures, we've got layer actions and regional effects and legendary actions, and every single creature has adventure hooks, which is like the Hall of Danger products that I review, which I also really love seeing there, which is whenever it's basically telling the DM like, hey, here are some suggestions on how to use these creatures and where they could appear, to the point where I think all Wizards products in the future should use adventure hooks, because they're just really helpful for a DM when you're thinking of ideas of where and how to use these creatures. And yes, the Genius Loci is basically Taka from Moana. It's CR25, like a volcano fey creature. Very cool. Glass whale, a stained glass window creature who can turn into the stained glass, and then when she dies, explodes into all these painful shards. Some really cool creature ideas that I was particularly impressed with. Domain of a domain on the Feywild. So this is, if you have looked at Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft at all, that book is a good chunk of that book is just detailing multiple domains. So each domain has its own little demi-plane in its world. Some of them are just cities, and some of them are entire regions. They all have this kind of weird supernatural effect about Barovia in Ravenloft is, and that's what Ravenloft is a bunch of these demi-planes, domains of dread. And the Feywild is essentially that as well, where it can be this one lord who's in charge of this one domain that he's basically manipulating and probably trapped by himself or herself or themselves, whatever it is. And in this case, this adds one new Feywild domain called Dualis, which has a theme of echoing or twins or cloning. And even when you enter the realm, a echo of you, an exact copy of you, appears in the other side of this world, which has all kinds of crazy connotations and story hooks you could use for players when they enter this realm. Suddenly they've got a rival party which looks exactly like them, and are they evil, are they good, are they the same, exact same in some way? The only difference is physically they're supposed to be like a mirror image. So if you've got a birthmark, it should be on the other side or something. You've got this lord who lures a bunch of women in here, I guess, and has a bunch of children of different styles that all look differently. It seems very, very creepy. And we get a nice, really detail here. Even the map art is very similar to the one from Wild Beyond the Witchlight, which looks like an appropriate Feywild zone, like exact same. And they're all detailed with different encounters, and it smartly uses a lot of the creatures that were introduced, like the Butterfly Queen and the Candlelings, which are kind of like anti-will-o-wisps. Really fun ideas with all of these different encounters. And then we a full, like Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, a full breakdown of the Lord of the Realm, the Lord of Reflections, is a CR16. It just has all this cool stuff. And there's also this bit where he destroyed his carbon copy when he appeared here, and he scattered the remains across the entire realm. So automatically you've got a built-in like quest. If your players get stuck in here, like their main quest is to like gather all the different pieces of this lord, and then by gathering them together and then using them in combat and showing a reflection, basically that would prevent him from being able to regenerate like he usually does, and essentially destroys this entire demi-plane. So really well thought out and cool idea to just offer an entire domain here. I thought would be incredible, and like that alone could almost have been this whole section could have been its own supplement, really. Like you could sell an entire, just, hey, here's a fun domain on the Feywild, but this is just included in a larger supplement, which is even more crazy. Finally, we get encounters and adventures. So encounters are specifically like a single scripted meeting of the players and creatures, and those creatures can either just be a hostile combat encounter, or they could be something else. And most of the time, if it's just literally a hostile encounter, you don't bother calling that in. I mean, it is encounter, but that's like an encounter table kind of thing. It's like a paragraph where it's like, hey, you come across these creatures, they're feasting on this, and they snap up, and you roll for initiative, and you have a fight. So when you have these kind of encounters that are actually like a page or two long and scripted, it means there's more that's involved here. So, for example, you may bargain with a group of phase spiders, and usually have to and of course, because it's a Feywild bargain, you'd have to give up like a tool proficiency or a skill that you know or something, which is, I think, a really fun twist. You can survive a dance off with a bunch of satyrs. You can save a town that's been trapped to repeat this festival over and over again. Rage of the Wendigo is a really creepy, like you're snowed in and the innkeeper has been, selling some questionable meats, and you have to, it, of course, all comes back to he's got a Wendigo problem, which I'm very well aware of in our current Rime of the Frostmaiden campaign. I really like these encounters, and they smartly use a lot of the creatures that were just detailed and added in this supplement, but they're also just really fun, interesting encounters, and they get the full, stat blocks and sidebars and art. Like, it just looks really, really good. It looks good without necessarily looking like it comes from an official book, though, which I appreciate. It doesn't use the usual like sepia tone and necessarily the font and all that, but it still looks like a professional book, which I really respect. They didn't just copy and paste like the same look, although nothing against that either. That look is perfectly fine, but I appreciate that it has its own look while still looking very, very well designed. Then we have 2 adventures. Now, one of them is, if I'm being honest, kind of just an encounter that's slightly expanded, and it's weird for me to have a complaint because it's crazy that we even get these adventures, right? But one of them is way longer than the other one. So the first one, the 5 Lords of Shade Willow Pond, it's got a fun little backstory of these Eladrin lords kind of fighting over this beautiful pond that's at the edge of all of their domains, and they come together once a year and just kind of share it and celebrate it. And the entire adventure is just the party happens to stumble on this pond during this event, and then all of the Eladrin lords demand the party, give them a gift for being able to attend this festival, and then it's just detailing like what all the party can do to do that. And it really reminds me of a game, like a talent show, like you would see on TV where it's got judges, the panels and things, and your goal is literally to impress the judges. I think that's a really great encounter. I don't think this really qualifies as a full adventure, if I may be so bold. It's really an encounter that's just expanded to, give more options to players and more options to the DM to be able to kind of work around, like, hey, what if your players are bad at improvising, and here's a character you can help them with, and what are some ideas they can use, and then, what are the personalities of all the judges, because if you fail, the goal is to impress at least, I think, 3 of the 5. There's 5, and there's a 5th one that like presides over everything. Then if you impress them all, you get some kind of reward. And then if you fail, they all hunt you down, which is a bit of a shocking twist there. But I think it's a very fun encounter. I don't think it necessarily qualified as an adventure, but I get that the terminology is kind of weird because it is longer than the encounters that we just saw. It's just not necessarily a full adventure. Thankfully, the other one, and by the way, really gorgeous maps here. The other one is absolutely a full adventure that is, as I mentioned, somewhere between a one-shot adventure that you would see in like a beginner, starter book or something, and then something like Lost Mine of Fendelver, which is probably closer to like 40 pages or so. This one is about 20 some odd pages, and I think it's really, really great. I've probably read the idea behind this adventure just countless times. So it's not necessarily original in that way, but I think it does do some neat things by the end of it, and it fully executes very well on what it's trying to do. So the theme is, of course, missing people in a town near the woods, and it's a logging camp, and of course they've pissed off the nature spirits, and the nature spirits are fighting back. That is a hook that I have seen countless times in so many Fae-themed adventures. It works well. It's a compelling hook. But my goodness, it is probably the most popular story hook you can do. That being said, I still think it's very, very well designed and executed because it starts out as an investigation, and that leads you to the Fae and the Dryads who are kidnapping people. And then you realize that the Fae are transforming the kidnapped people into basically these bestial versions of themselves and then letting them loose on a hunt. And then you've got this gathering. The party gets to stumble into the gathering of hunters who are going to hunt down the townsfolk. And then the Lord that presides over all of this gives the players a choice, like, hey, you guys are better than the townsfolk, clearly. We can either hunt you instead of the townsfolk, or you can join us in hunting the townsfolk. So kind of a major binary good or evil choice there, but assuming the players choose to be the hunted, or even the hunters, I guess they still go through and go through these scripted encounters. If you recall, if you watched Marvel's Werewolf by Night, it's kind of a similar theme, and it is done in several other cases as well. I guess in any kind of the most dangerous game where you come in and you meet. There was a horror movie that did that very well, where you get to meet all of the people first. You have like a social scene, and then the hunt happens. So it's fun because the people hunting you or the people you're hunting alongside, depending on which choice you make, are people you've interacted with before, and they're all well, written and designed and fun NPCs. There's Shatterkais and Fomorians and Eladrins and a talking phase spider dressed for safari, wearing a pith helmet and monocles on 4 of his 8 eyes. I fucking love it. I love it. It seems really well done. And then you get a bunch of scripted encounters, which I think is appropriate because for a Feywild, you don't necessarily think dungeon crawl, which I know D&D is best at, but I'm really okay with the way this is designed because I think that's the way that you pace this adventure, because it's the players going through a gauntlet of just, outdoor Fey craziness, and you give them a bunch of scripted encounters that they stumble into, and that's what it is. It's like, oh, there's a bunch of phase spiders, or all the different people are hunting you, or you stumble onto a chessboard encounter with a bunch of Modrons and Pentadrones and Tridrones, like all set up to face off against you all, and it's just really, really delightful and fun. You end up with the Queen of Air and Darkness, I believe, at the end, and you have to get this certain whip to win, and I really enjoyed this adventure. I thought it was very well done. Probably one of the best Fey adventures, honestly, that I have seen. And the fact that it's almost like hiding in the midst of this like supplement that gives you a bunch of other stuff is almost criminal, because this, I think if you were a DM, like the supplement's price, the adventure is almost worth the cost. I think it is worth the cost of admission. Like, I think it's that damn good. It's just 20 pages of awesomeness. We get a bunch of separate VTT friendly or whatever you're using battle maps to run with. Like, absolutely delightful. Thumbs up to that adventure, and honestly just thumbs up to this entire supplement. All right, let's go over my pros and cons for the Feywild Companion. Pro: interesting and well-designed new subclasses, magic items, and lineages inspired by the Feywild. I didn't have really any major complaints. There were some of the subclasses I liked more than others. I thought were a bit more interesting, but honestly, they all, I thought, did good jobs by using their Fey themes, and I think clearly the designers knew their way around designing subclasses. The lineages were probably the only ones where I was a bit like, oh, really? They can do that? They felt a little bit overly strong, but maybe it's because it's balanced that they don't get the normal ability score increase. That's actually an interesting trade-off. But otherwise, I thought the player-focused stuff was really particularly well done. Pro: detailed information on new Feywild realm of Dualis, including its history, denizens, and lord. Just ripped like straight out of something you would see from Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft in terms of its the amount of just source book goodness that it gives you, that as a DM I feel like I could run that adventure given the encounters, given the information in the background of the world, and given the lore and how he plays into everything. Like, I think you could run that as not necessarily a full campaign, but I think it's as much wealth and information as you would get from Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft as that one domain, to the point where I kind of wish they would give me a bit more, but I can't complain about, because we get so much in general. Pro: over a dozen intriguing Fey creatures, each with adventure hooks. Amazing bestiary, probably one of the better ones I've seen. Pro: a fun variety of well-scripted Fey encounters, which is build off the bestiary, frankly, that all of these encounters are very well-designed and offer a good mix of like social stuff and investigation stuff that's more than just, hey, we're going to throw you into a combat encounter. Pro: the Feywild Hunt is a perfectly paced Fey-themed adventure. Huge thumbs up to how much I enjoyed that Fey adventure. It's just, it's so well designed, and even though it uses a very usual, I guess, execution for the adventure hook, I loved how it ends and how the whole thing plays out. And I think getting that most dangerous game with the Fey is perfect. And Pro: it's a professional design with beautiful artwork. Like, the product just looks absolutely gorgeous. One of easily the best looking books I've seen on the DM's Guild. Cons: I have nothing. I have nothing to complain about here. Like, a few little middling things about like, oh, this one adventure was not really that long, or this one subclass didn't really excite me. Like, there's so much else that overshadows any very middling complaints I would have. There's nothing major in here. Final verdict: the Feywild Companion grants players interesting new lineages, spells, and subclasses, while DMs can enjoy well-designed creatures, encounters, and even a medium-length adventure, resulting in the most comprehensive and useful Feywild-themed supplement on the DM's Guild. Thank you everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can watch more reviews and follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel, and you can support my work at patreon.com/Rogue Watson. Shoutouts to Platinum patrons: Joe, Will, Thomas, Stan, William, Brandon, Genocider, David, Eclectic, Roleplay, Roll, Christopher, Brian, William, David, Corey, Code 1337, Matthew, Big Nut, John, Infernus, Chris, Scott, and Gene. And gold patrons: RPG, Paper Crabs, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Marcus, Dead Lizard, Lounge, Sam, Lumpy Spuds, Jerome, Nathan, Fast Like a Tortoise, Scott, Refus, Carolyn, and William. Thank you all very much for your support.